Hi everyone, Deborah Hamilton. Long time no see. It's been a month. I sort of am missing the every week, every Wednesday meetups, but I know that everybody's life is so busy, and I'm thrilled to be here hosting us today. It's great to see Sally, and it's great to see Rose, and it's been a crazy day because I am in the process. Hi, Jeff. How are you? Good to see you. It's been a crazy day for me because in putting together the program tonight, talking about divorce, one of the D's, of course. I'm also putting together a program for the Senior Women's Attorney Group, SWAG, from New Jersey, which I'll be giving a program for on Monday, September 11th, talking about divorcing with pets. And for all of you who have pets, who have significant others, or who have spouses, it is so important now, while you still like each other, to make a plan for your pet. Hi, Jan. Good to see you. It is so important. And if you don't have a significant other, that's great. Then you don't have to worry about it. But if you have a significant other, and the pet is an important part of your family, your relationship, making a plan now is so important. I'm going to talk to the attorneys in New Jersey about what it is they as attorneys need to do to keep that question, the custody of their client's pet, out of the courts. Now, in New Jersey, they don't have a law yet or legislation yet giving judges or requiring judges to make that decision for pet owners. If they can't make the decision themselves, the judges are required to consider the best interests of the pet, which gives the judge a little bit of direction on what it is they need to do. For me, and I think for most of the people that I work with who are divorcing with pets, they know what's best for their pets, not somebody wearing a black robe. And so if we, as their attorneys or their mediators or their conflict consultants, can help them take a breath, step back, and create a process by which they can find the best next steps for their pets, it will be an incredible, incredible situation. So before I go into the new piece that I have brought to my discussion of divorcing with pets, so please remind me to do, past, present, and future. I'm going to check in with everyone because it's been such a long time. So Sally, how are the girls and how are you?
We are all hot. It's we're up at the crack of dawn walking, and that's pretty much it. And then we're inside in the air conditioning and run out and use the ladies' room and run back in again. And canceling the grooming appointment, canceling the vet appointment because the drive is too long, even though we have AC in the car, it's just too hot. So everything is kind of pushed back until the temperatures calm down.
That likely will be October. I know I was looking at the temperature because we're heading to New York tomorrow. And I was looking at the temperature going, oh gosh, it is almost as bad as it is here in North Carolina, where we hit 95 today. And I can say the only good news about hitting 95 is that after the hurricane came through, the rain, we got 9 inches of rain. The rain put a chill on the pool that I swim in that was really a little chilly. It was sort of like when I went in November last year. The pool was pretty chilly. However, now it's bathtub-like again, because we've had sustained weather of over 90, and it only gets down to about 85 at night. So I'm hoping that in New York, in Connecticut, where you are, where the girls are, that at night it gets a little bit cooler than 80. Is it doing that?
Mm, well, I can't tell a lie. It's really hot at night too.
Well then, okay, so it's not so much fun there. I was hoping to get better weather there, but obviously I'm bringing my weather with me, and I apologize. I'm sorry. Jan, how's Tonka? How's everything going with you?
We're well. I'm not too far from Sally. So, but the only thing is, I don't think it's as humid as it is down south. Like, I think the humidity here has gotten to be quite a bit less than it was, let's say, like a month ago. So in that way, I think it's better, but it still is really hot.
So you're only at 50% humidity, not like us 75% humidity. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, yesterday, I think at one point I took Tonka out and he never turns around. He turned around. He was like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah. I've taken care of business and now I'd like to go back inside.
Yeah, exactly. But otherwise we're well. Thank you.
Good, wonderful. And Jeffrey, love to have you chime in and remind me of your pets. If you've been here before, my apologies. Or if you're new, tell us where you're from and what kind of pets you have.
I have 3 German Shepherds, ages 9, 7, and 17 months.
I thought I knew you.
Yeah. And the 9-year-old spends the whole day inside in the air conditioning. The 7-year-old and the 17-month-old go out, run around for a while, jump in the water, cool off, and then, play some more. So we're doing well. Well, I think everybody's in Connecticut. You've got to move to Connecticut. I mean, the rest of us are.
I know that we're all here.
I know. I don't know why I'm not in Connecticut, although I think I'm spending a week or so in Connecticut in October. I'm giving someone a birthday present, so I think I'm spending about a week. So hopefully I'll be doing one of the programs. If we go back to maybe twice a month or whatever, I'm going to send around a poll after today to see if people want to do the first and third or the second and fourth, just to make sure that we have enough time together to make sure that everyone is able to make their plans, update their plans, find out new information that's going to make the care of their pets top of mind. In this discussion tonight about divorce, I want to divert for just a half a second because I said I was going to New York, and I actually called rover.com because my caregiver was not available. She got a full-time job, which is great. And so I called Rover and they made a reservation. And then on Monday, they called and said, sorry, my plans have changed. I can't take care of your dog and I'm leaving Thursday. So I was in the Sally Anderson Bruce camp of having somebody cancel on you the day before you're going to walk out the door. But the good news was that I had actually responded to 3 people off Rover as well as, and I hope I'm not freezing. Am I freezing? Okay, good. Because the little mice who run the internet here in Eastern Carolina don't usually work after 6. My husband and I have found that the internet really is not good after 6. So I called the vet. And remember, finding those caregivers is your job. You've got to do that. So I called all 4 of my veterinarians because I have VCPRs, the vet client patient relationship, with 4 veterinarian groups here in Morehead City. Not because I wanted to, but because I was looking for a really good vet and didn't have one. But now I have VCPRs with 4 different veterinarians. And the one I really like, I called, and the other ones I called as well. Some of them didn't have any vet techs who were doing any dog sitting on the side, but my vet actually had someone. And I met with her last night, and she is delightful. She, of course, understands about bloat. She understands about keeping them in during the heat. She's going to stay overnight with them. And she is incredibly comforting. I had a complete sense of comfort speaking with her. She isn't, overly bubbly. She is just normal, sort of like all of us. So when you're looking for someone to care for your pet, you really have to go outside your comfort zone. I really didn't want to call Rover, but I said, well, why not? Let me see. And there were 2 or 3 who responded that they weren't available. There was one that responded they were available, and then they said they weren't available. So I'm a little gun shy for Rover, but I don't think that it should be a total cross off of Rover because unfortunately they do provide a service that may or may not work. I prefer finding people who or come recommended And that's always, your best bet. So back on topic about divorce, this program that I'm giving, it's part of a new program that I'm putting out there for divorce attorneys, because I think divorce attorneys really are, at least the ones I've spoken to, are really leery of handling pets of divorce, because it really is a messy situation. It's emotional. There's no clear-cut answer. I've had 4 in the last month where attorneys have called me to help them deal with the pets of divorce. And it was rewarding for me that they recognized the value that mediation brings to the discussion, that I personally bring to the discussion, because I don't have a preconceived bias or decision making, and I don't get tired. I'm actually doing another one when I get back next week, and they said, well, we're gonna work for 8 hours. And I went, yeah, not so much. I said, this is not a commercial or civil disagreement. This is a family disagreement. This is like child custody. So we need to be really aware of the toll it takes on the parties to have a conversation about their pets. So you really have to take the time. You have to keep checking in, which I know my colleagues in divorce would rather rip their eyeballs out than have to check in after a decision is made, because that's when you find out where all the wormholes are and you have to fix the wormholes. Well, that's what I do. So I've created this program, which, if you know anyone who is getting divorced or who's a divorce attorney, please, have them look for it. It's going to come out next week. It's called Surviving Divorce with Pets. And it talks about having a conversation with your clients that starts with talking about the past, talking about the present, and then talking about the future. And a lot of my colleagues balked at that, because why do we want to go into the past? I mean, that's so difficult. Well, most of the time, if you talk about the past, you also talk about that great day when you brought the pet home, and those great times you had with the pet at the beach or up in the mountains, or when you traveled with the pet. Usually it conjures up that really good feeling you had with your pet when you first got it. Then you deal with the present. Where are you now? And the animosity is there. But because we talked about the past and we talked about some of the better times with the pet, and the past where you weren't so angry with your ex about how they cared for the pet or didn't care for the pet, and you remember, oh God, yeah, I was traveling a lot, 5 years ago, and they did take care of the dog or cat or horse or bird a lot, and the dog or cat or bird or horse thrived. And so remembering, because we never remember the good things when we're going through divorce. I hate to say that, but we don't necessarily remember the good things. So you remember the good things, and you can create an agreement that maybe one party gets the dog and the other doesn't get the dog. I am a proponent of allowing the parties to decide for themselves what's best for the pet. And I'm also a proponent of making sure, our attendees, that if something occurs and happens, having someone in the wings to take care of the pet in the event something happens to you. And maybe your ex is the last person you'd want to have your pet if something happened to you. However, if you have 2 or 3 friends and your ex, and the 2 or 3 friends can't take your pet, but your ex can, that might be something to just consider as an alternative. So I'd like Sue to have my pet. I'd like Joan to have my pet. But if all else fails, Jim can take my pet. Because you really want to make sure that you have a soft landing for your pets. So Jeff has 3 German Shepherds, and hopefully, Jeffrey, you have created some sort of a plan for the future care of your pets. Let me know if you've started at all to make the plan and appoint caregivers.
I have. I've done everything short of speaking to my attorney, because I think there's going to be some changes necessary in my power of attorney. But my plan was kind of to have my sister handle dispensing money to the person who will be responsible for the pets. So yes, I've tried to follow your advice.
Oh, wonderful. Because, it, and make sure you check in with the person. Well, you're talking to your sister, so check in with her and make sure she's still good, at least once a year. And make sure you check in with the person who has said they'll take care of your fluffy wonders, because people's lives change. I mean, look at my girl who was perfect for the 2 years I've been here in North Carolina, and she got a full-time job, and now she can't take care of my pets. Now that's great for her because she has a full-time job with benefits, health benefits. So I can't say to her, I think you should take care of my dogs over having health care benefits, because she works for the North Carolina government now. And you have to appreciate that people's lives change. So Jeff, just make sure that if you have someone who's going to care for the 3 dogs together, or somebody's going to take the elder dog and somebody's going to take the younger dogs, you just make sure that there's redundancy. I know that Jan and Sally, my mission in life is redundancy. So in divorce, if you're having an issue, make sure you have redundancy with the care of your pet, and possibly have your ex as one of the people who would be the fallback person. But at least make sure that everything is in writing. So I'm so glad, Jeff, that you've done that, that your sister's going to make sure she pays and if your attorney needs help understanding what the heck you just made, don't hesitate to give him my contact information, because I'm happy to educate trust and estate attorneys, because some of them think having it in your will, and maybe having a pet trust is great. They don't necessarily understand the need for incorporating the entire MAP plan, which is, the plan you've made, the caregivers you've appointed, the information you've given when you address the needs of each pet, and then the fact that you need to publish it not only with your attorney, Jeff, don't forget, but you need to publish it with your veterinarian and all of your caregivers as well. So your sister should have a copy, the caregiver should have a copy. It's really important that happens. And in fact, when I was talking to the vet tech who was here last night to take care of my pets, she said to me, well, will you call the veterinarian and tell them I'll be taking care of the dogs in case there's an emergency, and that I will be able to take the pets to them? And I said, absolutely. I'm going to leave her some information. If she can't get in touch with me, she has 3 other numbers to get in touch with to get a credit card to cover whatever expense that needs to be fulfilled, because we really do need to make sure we have that plan. Jan, how's everything going with you with caregivers? Everything good? And I know you went through divorce, and thankfully you got Tonka, and that was great. And I don't know if having the pet go to your ex as a last resort, if the other people didn't show up, might be something you would consider.
Well, at the time it was a different dog, and I didn't have a MAP plan then, because it was a long time ago. I mean, I've been divorced, for close to 20 years, over 20 years. But one thing I do have to say, as far as having multiple, that in a lot of divorces, friends or people take sides.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to be clear with the people who might be your friends or people who are taking your pet if something happens, that it's okay that they should treat your ex like, cordially, at least, even if they civilly, if that's who's going to have the dog, because that animosity travels. I mean, as much as, people may say they don't take sides, people, who love you are most likely are going to take your side in whatever the circumstance. And just to keep that in mind.
That is really a great point that I have not really fleshed out, but you're absolutely right. So if you do have caregivers pre-divorce, you've made your plan with your ex, your spouse, right? They're not your ex yet, your spouse, and everything is great. And then all of a sudden everything isn't great and things go haywire. Will the people who were your heir and a spare step up? That's really a great point. And I'm going to write that down so that I don't forget to give that to the swag people, because it really is important that the parties recognize that the ex may be the person who you've designated as the caregiver for the pet, and that's okay. And that might be part of what the agreement said, in the event that, because as we talk about here all the time, God forbid something happened to you and you can't care for your pet. Where's your pet going to go? You want it to have a soft landing. So you want it to go to someone or something. And I mean, you may really hate your ex, but that's why I've created this new program with the past, present, and future, because it reminds you that for a lot of the relationship, the dog was a part of the family's life, right? The ex and you and everybody. I mean, my husband has never really taken care of my dogs, except now that we're retired. He can feed them. Never has fed them in their life before, but now he can feed them. And I know that if God forbid anything ever happened to me, he would really want to keep the pets, even though, he doesn't take care of them. He really does love them and want to take care of them. So you really have to get over that. I gotta be right. And I've got an ego, so I'm never going to be nice to my ex, and recognize that, unfortunately, my old adage, your pet doesn't hate your ex. You wish it would, however, it never does. And when it sees your ex, it will give it the, greatest exuberant welcome, because it doesn't hold a grudge. First of all, it lives in the moment, right? So it hasn't seen your ex in months or maybe even years. And it may take a minute or two. I mean, for Junie, when I come home from a business trip, it takes him at least 5 minutes to recognize it's me. He comes up, he says hello, he walks back into the living room to Jim, and I'm like, hello. And then all of a sudden he goes, oh, wait. And those little cogs snap in his pea brain, and he goes, oh shit, that's mother. And then goes berserk. But it takes at least 5 minutes. So, when Judge Judy says, well, bring the dog in and let me see who it goes to, I want to smack her upside the head, because of course they're going to go to one party over another. But if you removed that party, the other party would be the dog or cat or whatever it goes to. So it really is important. And it's interesting because my son has a cat now, and he's living with a lovely girl. And if they decide to, tie the knot and everything, I'm really going to have a discussion with them about the future care of Jane, right? Because I think I spoke with all of you 3 or 4 or 5 years ago when we were all together during COVID, that my son broke up with his fiance, and she had discussed taking the cat. And thankfully, he didn't let her take the cat. However, that was done by, well, if you take my cat, I just want you to know that if you can't care for my cat, call me. I'll take my cat back, and I'll take your cat if you can't care, if you lose your job or whatever. So now we're venturing into a new situation, and it's delicate, right? Because first of all, it's my son, who you can't say anything to because he knows everything. I mean, it's a genetic thing, I think. And so I'm sitting here going, well, I'd like to make sure that he makes a MAAP plan. I'd like to make sure that he and Liana know how to care for the cat, that's where the cat would go if, God forbid, something happened to Drew. I would never go in and say, this is my son's cat, no, I want it back. No. But I do want to be on the list. I mean, in the event Liana doesn't want to keep the cat or can't keep the cat, that she would know that she could return it to me. And there would be no like, oh my God, no. We can never judge people who cannot take our animals after they said they could take our animals. I mean, shit happens, and we have to be happy that they told us, right? And that we didn't, think they were going to be there. That's why we need to check in every year with our caregivers. But I think I will have a little bit of a, discussion and say, let's talk about what happens to Jane so that everybody's clear on what happens to Jane if something happens to either of you. Because you need that picture, that, that 3x5 card on the refrigerator, which I know it isn't because the shoemaker's child has no shoes. saying that in the event of an emergency, call me. And I know 5 people who would go and get Jane and hold her until I got up from North Carolina. So these are the things that you really have to think about. So Jeff, if you have your plan together, just make sure you have that note up on the refrigerator. Mine's up on my refrigerator, saying in the event of an emergency, this is who you call. And it was very funny when the caregiver was here. We gave her the code to the garage. And then I said, but by the way, the dog room door is never locked. And she looked at me and I said, in the event of a fire, I don't want to put a locked door between getting my dogs out of their kennels and to safety, and locking my house up so that the burglars don't come. I mean, if the burglars want to go through my dog room, through my garage into my house, God willing, we do usually lock the door from the garage into the house. So that means that they're only going to steal everything in the garage. Go with God. I mean, that's my thought. Go with God. But I want to make sure my dogs are safe. And everyone should really think about that. So before we wrap up, I love that thought, Jan, and thank you for sharing it with me. Does anyone else have any thoughts regarding what to do, next steps? If they've had a friend who divorced with a pet and it was either really great or really ugly, share it with us, because it really is important for all of us to learn, and for the people who are going to listen to this community call, and what they could do. So Sally, I'll start with you. Any thoughts?
Well, I just have a friend that's going in for heart surgery, and she called her ex. Then they've been apart for at least 20 years, basically have nothing to do with one another. And she has said, if something happens to me, would you take my 2 dogs, 2 elderly dogs with health issues? And he said, absolutely. Just take that right off your plate. Don't even give it a second thought. I'll take them. So as Jan was saying, 20 years ago, she was divorced. A lot changes in 20 years. And so I'm always trying to find caregivers. I don't need heart surgery, but yeah, things change. So keep, updating and talking to people.
Right. I mean, you just never know. And when it comes to pets, people are a lot more magnanimous. And hopefully, you soften with age, one would think. That's why I'm doing the past, present, and future. Because if you think about all the good things that happened at the beginning in the past, when you got the pet and you had all the accidents all over the house, and then you went on vacation with the pet and everything, it brings all those good memories to the surface, so that the memories of the present where you're killing each other are a little softened. And then when you're thinking about the future, being able to hopefully build that trust and work collaboratively for the benefit of the pet is what is so necessary. Jan, any other pearls of wisdom? Because I just love that you added that. Thank you so much.
No, I don't think so. It just, haven't been there. It is a very challenging time, very challenging. And, I was lucky that there was really no debate. It was really my dog. She was bonded to me, and my ex was it's like, okay, you take the dog. We didn't really have much of a discussion about that, but, I don't know what I would have done had, we had quote unquote, like joint custody of the dog or something like that. Because I think she was the one that kept me going in so many ways. And so to not have that there would have been devastating. So I think it's such a tricky.
It's a trauma-inducing relationship, absolutely. Because if you lose the pet for, a week, a month, or, if you're on vacation, maybe not as traumatic as if, you have to have the pet go back and forth. I think that's traumatic for everybody, including the pet. I think being able to be relied upon in case of an emergency might be the best place to start, or in case of vacation, because then, it's between maybe a kennel, which the dogs usually hate. Not mine. They love kennels because they swim at the kennel and they get popsicles at the kennel. So they don't get that mean old mom's house. But most dogs are not really keen on going to a kennel. So being able to have someone they know come in, if you can get to that, if you can get to that point, which hopefully you can. Jeff, any words of wisdom as we wrap up?
Yeah, there are two things I want to say. One is I was left with the custody of my neighbor's two dogs in the last 6 months of her life. She had a brain tumor, and she asked me to take the dogs for one of her hospitalizations. I ended up with the dogs for 6 months. I was very fortunate in that the two dogs got along with my dogs wonderfully. Had they not, however, it would have been a much more difficult situation. It's one I could have managed by keeping them separate, but that's a situation in which things may not turn out right for people. The other thing that's been a concern to me is I have a dog walker whom I don't use very often, and it's really not a walker. She really just lets the dogs out into my yard if I'm away from home for more than 4 hours. And that's an intermittent thing. Maybe a couple times a month she comes. In the case that something happened to me and I was unable to take care of my dogs, someone would probably have to be hired to effectively a dog sitter. And the instructions I've given is that use your due diligence, hire your dog sitter like you have for your absence. But I still want my dog walker to come as often as possible, possibly every day, to make sure that everything's okay. When you deal with somebody you don't know, there's always the risk that your dogs really aren't being properly cared for. No matter how good their references are, no matter what happens. So I've learned this through the kids. I always stopped in at school unannounced, at camp unannounced, with my elderly parents in retirement home. I'd show up night and day, fire alarms, snowstorms, just to make sure they were being well cared for. Fortunately, I was never surprised. But I think that's very important to do those things. And those are the two things I want.
I think that's fabulous. And I know that Sally has done that often because she has two friends who may not be able to take care of the girls, but they do stop by, check in, phone call, whatever, so that the caregiver knows there's somebody there in the event that something happens and they can't care for it. And I have to laugh, Jeff, because when I had the Rover person coming, since I didn't know them and they weren't, someone who came from my vet or anything like that. So, you get this maybe false, but more sense of security that, if they're a vet tech at your vet's office, at least you can find them if they steal all your jewelry, right? But I was having, and I still will have, my builder's coming over, so he's going to come over and check in. I said to her, there's going to be 2 or 3 people coming in and out. I said, just because that's how I roll. And she goes, that's great. I think if somebody gets their nose at a joint, if somebody's coming in to check up on your pet, take a second look, because and ask some curious questions. Tell me a little bit more about why that would be a problem. Well, I just don't want strange people coming into the house, and appreciate that, because maybe they don't know the person, and maybe take the time to introduce them to Jan or to Sally if that's the person who's coming to check up on your pets while you're away. They can't be there, but they can at least make sure, because that's why we have 3 caregivers in the MAAP plan, because the person who takes your pet may become incapable or unable to take care of your pet. And because there are 2 other people who have said they take care of your pet, they're checking. So there's always redundancy. So I think what you said is perfect. It is so important, because we always want to make sure that we leave our dogs and cats and birds and horses in the best hands possible. And in the event somebody has an issue, or they're new, and even if they're old, if they've been there forever, you really want to make sure you check in and always have somebody as a backup. So this has been such a wonderful night. I'm so glad to see everyone. Rose and I are going to be sending around a note to everyone to see if we want to go, and you guys can tell me right now, to once a month, which is what we're doing, or twice a month if you think that's better, say the 1st and the 3rd, or the 2nd and the 4th, or go back to every Wednesday, which may kill us all, but I would do that because I love everybody and it wouldn't matter to me. Jim would live. So what do you think, Sally? What do you think, Jan?
Sally?
I would say twice a month.
That's what I was gonna say too.
Okay. Would it be better the first to remember the first and the third, or the second and the fourth? It doesn't matter.
I don't think it makes any difference.
Okay. So I think I'll do the first and the third. Jeff, any opinion?
No, can I just add one quick thing, 10 seconds
Sure.
on what you just said? Multiple caregivers, I think it's important to have a line of authority.
Yep.
In other words, if I have 3 caregivers, I don't want them arguing. I want to say, this person's opinion goes first, followed by this person, followed by this person. And I try and do it in a way to not to hurt their feelings, because this person has known my dog longer, or this
Yeah.
person lives closer. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the person in charge definitely needs to know that the heirs and a spare are there to help them, not to usurp them. And if they give, so this is that communication piece and that transparency piece that I talk about all the time. They have to be able to communicate with each other and not take offense. So if Jan says, well, Deborah, I think the dogs need to get out a little bit more, being able to say, well, I just can't get here any more often. Are you able to? That's always the next step. So if someone's going to criticize, the one who's in charge because they don't think they're doing a good job, the one who's in charge needs to use their words and not get their panties in a twist, to say, well, you might be right. What would your solution be? And let me know, let me see if we could work something out, because you don't want to give ultimate decision making to only one person in case they go crazy, and then you have nobody to step in. You want it to be a collaborative relationship, not that Jan and Sally are going to step on my toes and I'm taking care of your dogs, Jeff, but rather if Sally and Jan see something, they need to say something, and I need to recognize they're not saying it to criticize me, and maybe they are, and I'm just not going to take it that way, but rather gain a little bit more information and see if it's necessary. Because we all have known people who thought they were taking really good care of their dogs, and they weren't, because they just were sick. I have the woman with the 3 dachshunds who didn't know she was septic. And so for 3 weeks, the dogs were really living in like a bad situation. And she needed help, and yet there was nobody there to give her any help. So that I absolutely agree with you, Jeff, that there should be a hierarchy, but that hierarchy needs to be collaborative. And I think that would serve the dogs the best. Might not serve the person who's in charge the best, but we're not thinking about them, we're thinking about the dogs. I hope you
Good. Understood. Yep, I agree.
Okay, guys, have a great night. I will see you then on the 3rd Wednesday in September, which I believe is, I don't have a calendar with me, but I will look it up, unless somebody else has a calendar in front of them. So the 3rd is the 20th. I will see you on the 20th. And you guys, I am so looking forward to it. Twice a month, the 1st and the 3rd. Kiss your babies for me. Jeff, I don't know your guys' names, but kiss those 3 little monkeys for me. And Jan, kiss Tonka. And of course, Sally, kiss the girly girls. Until next time, this is Deborah Hamilton. And thank you so much for being here for the MAAP community call.